Yeah? Cool. So I feel that Club Zero explores how modern wellness concepts like we hear around like autophagy and conscious eating and fasting can be used to coerce and control. I was wondering what prompted you and your collaborator Geraldine to explore this darker side of wellness culture.
I would say the film is talking about manipulation, yes, but it's also a weird way of showing us in our rich society how we're doing wrong when we try to do good. I think the film has a certain distanced perspective on what is happening. And I think the reason for that is that in the end, we see that in a way, all the characters in the film are blind. The manipulation is not only focused on the club around Miss Novak, but also the parents are in a way helpless to understand what happens to their kids. So I would say in general, it's difficult to find the guilty person within that film. And maybe that's the core part of the film, to understand that things may happen that we cannot prevent and we cannot fully understand. And maybe for the persons who are in that cult, for example, until the very end, they think that's the best version they could have found, which is weird, but it's also hard to accept.
Yes, and talking about nobody is exactly bad or good, it was remarkable the way you portrayed the parents who show some emotional neglect and pressurize their kids, but on the other hand, we see by the end that they love them.
Yes.
As well. So, was it intentional to show this, to portray it in a very nuanced way?
Yes. I remember the very beginning of this project, probably the initial reason to make this film was also a very personal fear of myself, being a parent, when a parent of a teenage boy, understanding that I might not be able to prevent things that happen to him. That normal blindness that one has towards maybe something that is in front of your nose. This is also something that struck me, and in my perspective, those parents do try their best, but they just can't do any better. Yeah, that's why I wouldn't really say that the film is against some wellness cult. I was trying to do something that goes a little bit deeper, even talking about the way we're constantly being influenced by certain thoughts that in the end may blind us.
But I think it's interesting how concepts that appear to be good, like fasting, appears to be good, can also be used as a weapon. I didn't think that. Yeah. So an interesting part of the film also is that the portrayal I found of Miss Novak, who it looks like she doesn't go after money, for example, like a lot of cult leaders or predators we see in populist show, or, she comes across like she believes in her ideology. So it's quite a different representation of this cult leader as we have used to see them.
Exactly. That's why I don't think it's right to say fasting is used as a weapon. No one uses anything as a weapon in the film. Miss Novak truly believes that she's doing good. She's not set out to bring these children into a bad situation. On the contrary. So the research with Mia Wasikowska for the film was also that we interviewed some people who used to be members of cults and who had managed to escape. And we asked them about their cult leaders to understand the concept a little bit better. And some of them said that their cult leaders had been, as you say, psychopaths who maybe just enjoy the power over other people. But quite a number of those cult leaders obviously seemed to be people that actually thought that they were doing good although they were not in reality, and although they were manipulating people, but they believed in their ideas truly. And this was the more interesting concept for us, because I think it holds good for most of us. I mean, not many people are bad because they want to be bad people. I think everyone sort of for themselves, every one of us thinks to be okay in a way. I mean, we believe in the things that we think that are right. And that's the more frightening thing, that if someone believes that it's good to not eat.
Is this a territory that interests you in general in your work? Because I feel watching your other films like Little Joe or Lourdes, there's always this slight distance and ambiguity that maybe results in dividing a little bit the audience and the reviewer. So do you feel that this exploring this ambiguity about what's good, what's bad, who is right, who's wrong, is something that...
Yes. I remember the research for my film Amour Fou, that's 10 years ago, was interesting because the film took place in the beginning of the 19th century in Germany, so Prussia back then. And during my research for the dialogues, so there are many scenes where intelligent, noble people discuss about politics in the film. And so I had to research a lot about the ideas back then about the rights system. And it was the beginning of democracy. It was when in France there was the French Revolution, and in Germany they started to think about changing the system as well. And the noble people were a little bit afraid of democracy. So there are scenes in the film where they discuss and they bring all the arguments against democracy. And I remember when I researched that back then, I was astonished to understand how beliefs can change, because I grew up in a world where we all say democracy is the best system we have. And then I was reading all those statements and articles of a time where democracy sounded a crazy idea to people who were, for example, educated, noble people. They said, how can those uneducated people be able to vote and decide? They were really concerned that this will not ever work. And I remember that very, very well. The whole research for that film helped me a lot to understand that truth and belief obviously changes throughout history.
Both the cinematography and the sound, and this is a personal opinion, has a very seductive repulsiveness. Like, this is totally personal. So, you know, the colors are very bright and inviting on the one hand, but they have something incongruous with each other, and the music is surprising and unpredictable. Maybe we can speak with Marcus about that. Like, how did you work with your cinematographer and the composer? How did you create this landscape? Yeah.
Also concerning the colors, the colors, the visual concept in my films comes very much also from the costume designer, Tanja Hausner. When I have my script ready, she's one of the first persons to read the script, and she comes up with some visual ideas about costumes, but also about set design. And so some of the weird humor also in the scenes comes sometimes from strange costumes and or strange interior designs, like the pink-hearted bed in the vomiting scene. That's a weird contradiction, but that's part of the awkward humor of the film. And with Marcus, maybe you want to talk about how we developed the score?
Yes. And I wanted to make something that was unpredictable. Even because for me it was unpredictable what will happen, because it was my first soundtrack I did ever for. Should I stand up? So you see one talking from the head from behind. and we talked a lot about what the sound will be, and as you heard, there is a lot of chorus in it, and that came from the one scene where they sing together, this hum, 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 and so, and a non-verbal kind of chorus was the idea. But at the whole, I have to say, I wanted to be the music. You cannot. You don't know where it comes from. It is a borderless thing. It comes from somewhere else. That was my idea, because this setting is a very it's a clear Western setting. So where and I thought the sound should come from another place, and you shouldn't know where this place is. So
one thing I noticed is that compared to other films, when the music just amplifies what the script is saying, for example, or accompanies, this music was kind of unpredictable in places, and it was kind of instructing my feelings. So it played an equal role with the script or the direction.
There was the idea even of Jessica that the music should not amplify emotions or the things that happen, but the music should happen on its own platform and should de-amplify what happens in what action is happening. So and this was very interesting for me, that the music was on its own trail, going on. Yeah.
I thought this was fantastically interesting in the film and very unique. And I think I got the same feeling with the production design as well, that it became like a character. Of itself.
So with the costume design, sometimes I like to do the costume rehearsal with the actors even before I talk to the actors very much about their role, because the costume rehearsal also for me is a moment where the persona or the character is being created. It helps me very much to see what the character will look like and what is she or he wearing, and then to understand why is that and what is the expression of the character and what is the role of the character within the whole system of my film. I think the characters in my films are, I would say, archetypes. So they don't have a backstory. They're not very psychological. You can sort of easily identify and feel, I know that. That's not how my films work. On the contrary, you're sort of watching something and recognizing things, but on a very general level of human existence, I would say, more like in a fairy tale. And I think the costume design helps with that. For example, when we talked about the role of Mia Wasikowska, the Miss Novak, she's wearing a little bit like me today, suits. It's like an armor. She's wearing a sort of armor, like a soldier going to war, or like someone who wants to protect herself. We don't know, but the fact that she's wearing those big jackets adds something to her personality that then Mia and I discussed a lot.
So interesting. What about the costumes of the headmistress?
Yeah, exactly.
That was so fascinating.
Yeah, I remember that my sister brought pictures of Cleopatra. So we thought of an ancient queen, or the figure, like the archetype also of the powerful woman, the leading woman, the queen, or the reigness. Is that the female version? I don't know. Oh.
Help us.
Also the queen. And the way the hair is done and the mighty jewelry and the dresses, it all adds up to that very general or universal image of the powerful woman.
Powerful, yeah. Fascinating. A last question from me, and then we go to the audience, is, was it important for you for the story to take place in an affluent school where scarcity of food is not even an issue?
And what school?
In a rich school where scarcity of food is not even an issue.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That eating disorders happen in the, like you said, Western, in the industrialized, rich first world countries, where we have enough. That's where people suddenly stop eating. Isn't that weird? I mean, for me, this is an incredible image about us.
It is so interesting. Does anybody have any question?
Just a second.
Could you please pass?
Hi, thank you very much for the film. You make the point of the eating disorders in the affluent West, but I was wondering whether it was more, or we wanted to ask if you were including the concept of, say, something that has been quite prevalent amongst nuns, for example, referring it to sort of holy anorexia, where there is that use of deprivation for sort of connection to divinity and elevated consciousness.
Yes, I think the interesting about food restriction is that it is a very important part of religions. So the idea of fasting is part in every religion, and it is practiced regularly to elevate your spirit, to become less body but more spirit, in order to easier connect to the divine whatever. So this is also part of the story, of course, that in the end of the film we make that clear connection to the Christian religion with the song Holy Night, Silent Night, and also the last image of that is close to that image of the Last Supper. So the connection to the Christian ideology is also made in the film. And I would say also to point out that this is also a very widespread brainwash to believe that there is life after death.
At the back?
Hi, I thought that was really great, that film. I really did. Thank you very much. And watching it, I couldn't help thinking of the similarities to Lourdes, because it's both of them are about a kind of misplaced faith. One happens to be in a cult, the other happens to be in a recognized religion. But it's the same process that's going on in both. Is that something that you were building on?
Yes. So Lourdes is a film I've made a couple of years ago. And it's about a miraculous healing in the place of Lourdes in south of France. And I would say yes, I think all my films describes those ideas that we live with. It seems to be very strongly implanted in our culture that we need some reason to get up in the morning. Otherwise we feel meaningless and we just have a depression. And these ideas that make us continue our lives and implement meaning to them differ. Some want to believe in God, others want to fast, others want to find love. So in my film Amour Fou, I would say this was very much about the idea of love, romantic love, love forever, true love, recognition through love. All this is shown in a very pragmatic and also dry, humorous way in Amour Fou. And maybe this is something that makes me like, this is the topic that is very much in the center of my filmmaking. And also Little Joe was about the weird idea that some pollen will make you happy. The idea of happiness itself is a weird chimera, or how do you say that? I remember with Little Joe, it's a funny story. I met a journalist who said, I was talking my concept, happiness doesn't exist. And he said, no, happiness exists. I know exactly what makes me happy. And I say to him, okay, then what is it? And he takes out his phone and shows me the picture of his weekend house on the countryside near the sea. And he says, isn't it lovely? And I said, yeah, the image is lovely. But when you get there, maybe the heating is broken or it's raining the whole weekend, you forgot to buy your groceries. The real life of that house is probably so-so. The image of it, your idea of it, is what is happiness.
We have another question.
Please have a mic. Embarrass my daughter now. So, obviously, eating disorders are a lot of eating disorders around control rather than sort of eating in itself. Did you find that that was one of your sort of aims in the film, that the students are trying to get control back somehow?
I do agree that eating disorders have got a lot to do with control, and also I have the feeling it's having control, having the power over your own body and over your physical needs. And I think it can be a very, like a high, it can be a very strong feeling to have that power over your own desires. And I think that's why it's so addictive, because that feeling that you gain from being able to not eat is a very strong empowerment. And I think that's why it's addictive. That's the dangerous thing about it. And it's very hard to get rid of an eating disorder.
I thought the film was really great, and I had loads of things that I wanted to ask about it. But can I ask two really quick questions? The first one was that when you were talking about the costume and stuff, the way that the characters were all dressed and like the layout of the school looked very uniform, and they all looked very sort of like collectivized in like the aesthetics of how the school ran. But then all of their singing and everything was like, there is more in us, and they were all really like very selfish characters. And then relating that to an eating disorder where it's all very like your own body, and it's like trapped in your own body, but then also like they're in a part of a cult, which is like a very communal feeling. Like, did you mean to be saying anything about some sort of collective, like people wanting to feel some sort of community in it? Or I don't know, like
yes,
individualism
absolutely.
versus
No.
the collective.
Yeah, absolutely. In many of my films, there are people in uniforms, and I think that has got to do with the fact that I always try to find a setting for each story that is a mini mundus, like the mini world, like the big world in a small version, but where you can see the hierarchies of our world.
Yeah.
And I think the uniform very often shows who you are in the society. It's not your private clothing, but it's saying who you're supposed to be. This is my role in society. This is my uniform. Yeah. And that's why it's interesting that in the school, the students wear uniforms, but a lot of other professions, people are wearing uniforms. And if you want, there are sort of subconscious uniforms as well, like filmmakers all dress the same, for example. Yeah. You find that all over. So with your clothing, you want to belong to a certain group.
Yeah.
So I totally agree. There is a strong urge of every one of us, to be part of some group, to be acknowledged and respected and appreciated by that group. And then at the same time, we very often understand that we are not part of that group and that we're basically alone, maybe, and that we just try to fit in. So I think everybody of us knows that this discrepancy. You want to be liked, but then on the other hand, you want to be yourself and not obey to any rules. It's a weird balance that every person, I think, in their lives has to manage.
Yeah, but they were all such selfish bastards, and then they were talking about being, you know, all
Well,
together.
why are they selfish bastards?
But all the characters,
Why?
they were horrible.
So you mean the basic selfishness of every human being?
Yeah, in the film.
So we all
All
are
of them.
selfish bastards.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I fear so, yes.
And then I wanted to ask, how did you get them to dance like that when Fred and Ragnar were dancing?
That's a question for Ragnar. Florence, are you ready to answer that?
To dance, I don't really remember. I feel like you were just kind of like sorry, I don't know why I said yes. I was really such an embarrassing scene for me. I couldn't even watch it. I was like, oh god. To dance, I mean, because me and Luke such good friends, so it's kind of just like natural for us. It was kind of just like if you asked two friends to just like dance how you would just like in your bedroom, that's how you would dance. And then it would be like, yeah, we tried out quite a few different dances, and yeah, that was the one. Yeah, it was because at first it was like, I remember we couldn't stop laughing, and then you were like, okay, like less laughter, like, and I was just like, okay, sorry, but yeah, that's how we danced. It was just natural.
I think there was very much more laughter in the scene still, and then we, in the sound editing, we took it out.
Yeah, but yeah.
Any other questions? Yes, we have one at the front. Olga? Yeah.
It's a very beautiful film. I just remember in the beginning being so angry. Yeah, watching the film, because it was like talking about food, and I just remember growing up in Kenya, my parents going, "You need to finish your play." I was like, what are these parents doing? You know, so I was getting really, I actually at one point I thought, I probably need to get out, kind of, you know, because it was just, it's like, what is this indulgence that the parents are doing, you know, to their kids?
What is indulgence? What does the word mean?
As in, if somebody is like saying, I don't want to eat, and you keep on saying, oh no, it's okay. I don't know. Did I explain indulgence? Okay.
But you mean the parents are supporting their non-eating or not?
Yes.
Okay. Also, for example, the parents of the character of Ragnar, they even say maybe it is doing you good to eat less. So they even encourage her. And the parents of Elsa, yeah, in a way, the mother definitely encourages the daughter. The father, on the other hand, tries to make her eat, but he doesn't have the good means to do that. And I would say the mother of Ben, of the Ben character, she definitely tries to make him eat. Also, she's probably the one character in the film that sees what is actually happening.
Yeah, but also the eating, it isn't really as a necessity. It's almost like, it's almost like we are at the dinner table. This is what we must do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's almost like if you're in a dance stage. You must dance. Because we must dance.
Yeah, maybe now what you say is exactly the weird reason for why in the rich countries where there is enough to eat, suddenly you find people who would deliberately stop eating.
Thank you.
Thank you too.
So, anybody else has a last question? No. I have a very last question, if you allow me. Sure. How do you feel on a personal level that your films have usually very strong reactions, either positive or negative? I suppose it's not intentional, but how do you feel as a result from these reactions?
I'm getting used to it.
Yeah.
I was very astonished with my second film in 2003 or 2004. The film was called Hotel, and it's a genre film, but a sort of experimental genre film about a mystery hotel where some people go missing, and during the story you try to find out what happens to them, who is kidnapping whom, or is there a monster in the woods, you don't know. And in the end of the film, the main character gets missing too, and you don't know why or where or what happens to her. And I had very angry audiences. I remember that someone said, that film is like watching the finals of the football world championship and suddenly my TV breaks down. And I say to him, thank you, that's a compliment. That's exactly what I wanted to do. There is no solution. You don't know how the ending is. So, but after that, I took 2 years off of being a filmmaker because I needed time to reflect what I had done. I was really astonished how frustrated or even angry audiences were. And then I had to understand, I think I took that time to understand what an audience wants from a film, and that some audiences are more open to a storytelling that is not satisfying your wish of 1 and 1 is 2, and there is good and there is bad, and in the end we're all happy. But there are audiences that like those other films as well. So I would say I watched a lot of films in those 2 years. I thought, okay, everyone has different perspective, so I just have mine. And if it makes people angry, I will have to live with it. But then when it happens again and again with each film, I am still hurt.
Oh, well, I'm sorry about that, because I love all of your films and I've been binging on them, like they're incredible. I recommend Hotel is a fantastic film, specifically. And thanks very much for making those inspired, thought-provoking films. I hope you make something soon and you continue to be so prolific. Thank you for this conversation. Thank all of you for joining. And have a good night.
Thank you very much. I think the film will be in the cinemas December 6th.
Yes.
Spread the word.
Spread the word. Tweet about it. Share it on social media if you liked it. Thank you.